So today we're going to talk about the Queen of Yharnam.
But which one?
I'm actually talking about RuPaul.
Hi, Richie.
Hi, Sen.
Hi, everyone. Today is a very special podcast with a very special guest.
Who is it?
Hi, everybody. Oh, whoops.
That's right.
Delete my audio.
No, it's... They're all like this, it's fine.
Hi, Michela.
Hi.
Michela, introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Michela. I am a Bloodborne enthusiast. I also really like Souls. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about the lore of Souls, Bloodborne, as well as various different game reviews and other game-related content. And on top of that, I do nonsense posting on Twitter, and occasionally I also cosplay.
Yay! And you have very wonderful Maria cosplay.
Yay, thank you. It's still my favorite thing, but I'd like to make some new things this year as well.
What do you have in mind?
So I'm thinking Jury from Utena the Musical, because that has been my obsession for well over 20 years, and hopefully also Edelgard von Trustfelg from Fire Emblem Three Houses.
I do not know that one, but I love Utena.
You will see all my nonsense posts about Edelgard, so you will see her plenty, and I'm so sorry.
And where can people find you in terms of YouTube and Twitter and all that stuff?
So the YouTube one is pretty easy except for the spelling of my name. It's youtube.com/ my first name, which is Michela. And then Twitter is a little more, and that's the other one that I'll post. It's a little more complicated. It's twitter.com/ my first name, Michela, D like David, and the word London.
And what we're doing here is actually a multi-part series. Woohoo! We're going to be talking about the Queens of Bloodborne.
Yes, Queen!
Yay!
And the first queen we'll talk about is Queen Yharnam. Now, of course, as with all of our multi-series podcasts, there is, in fact, an angelic outline.
Oh my god!
Yay! I'm so proud of myself.
No, that was perfection. It's like a silly radio show. I love it.
Thank you. Oh my god, there's another one that I wanted to actually play when Redgrave and Aegon were on talking about Odin, but I completely forgot. Are you all ready for this?
I don't think I'll ever be ready.
Oh! I am getting so many flashbacks right now to when I used to work in the community radio station here.
Yeah, so Holdsworth Hands did that. And, I didn't even ask him. She just sent it to me one day. And he was like, look at what I did. And I'm like, oh my god, it's beautiful.
That's amazing. Please tell me you just read, Orson Welles, as Orson Welles, just books. I didn't communicate that correctly.
I know books. I don't read them, but I know of them.
You look at them and then you're just like, what this? How to talk to fair maidens?
You're listening to 99.9 Ballarat's own Voice FM.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as per the angelic outline, we're going to talk about Queen Yharnam and basically about her life in general. So, let me ask you guys, who is Queen Yharnam?
She is a ancient Pthumerian woman who was named Queen. And it seems that in the lore of Bloodborne that the queens in the Pthumerian society were chosen for their ability to bear a special child from the Great Ones. So she, not a very great life, as we'll continue on to talk about it later in this podcast, but she was indeed a queen, but with shackles that were involved in that.
Mhm.
I guess continuing on from what Michela said, the Queen Yharnam, she is presumably chosen because she can bear the child of one of the Great Ones. And when we encounter her initially, there's two ways we can encounter her. You can encounter her in the city of Tumeru Ihil, where she is with child, and then later on you see these kind of spectral images of her in the present, in which her child has been stolen, and that is kind of the catalyst of the plot post-ROM, is finding Queen Yharnam's child.
Thank you. Now, the second question is, where was she born?
That is something that I wouldn't necessarily know. I would only say Thumeru, but that seems like the obvious answer, but maybe that's not even true. We'd have to look up her birth chart.
I am looking at the other questions here as soon as Sin said, where is she born? And I'm like, oh!
It's a classic Angelic.
It's one of these ones. It's a classic Sin outline.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one is, where does she live?
Well, we can say for sure that she, at least at the time of the events of the game, she lives deep within the deepest, darkest reaches of the Thumeru Ihil dungeon. So that's all we know for certain.
Mm-hmm. So before the dungeon, let's think back to like her everyday life. Richie, what's so funny? You agreed to talk about the queens, Richie. Michela was there.
Yeah, it's fine.
I was a witness.
Yes. So, like, where does she live? Do you think she lives in a little house? Do you think she has an apartment? Do you think...
So you think she commutes to Ihil?
She takes the bus with her gown on.
Yes. Well, what, you
it's
think
very messy.
Live in the dungeon?
We don't see anything that's not the dungeon.
I don't know, like...
No, okay, you see Thumerians sleeping in the dungeon, so they presumably do just, like, live there.
Okay, but Richie clearly didn't look at the outline before this moment, because if you see... It's
when did you send me the outline? It was about 15 minutes ago.
I sent it to you last week. As usual, you ignored it, because you ignore everything I sent you. You're like, it's probably Brutus again. Oh, Richie.
No.
The fear of a Brutus is real.
Twice summoned.
Go on.
Do you know what happened?
Oh
my god.
Brutus!
You can fill it with beer and it'll be craft Brutus.
Hello.
Oh my god! Brutus!
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm great. I missed you, little guy. How's it going? How you been?
Oh, it's good. Just looking at my baby collection.
So, Brutus, basically, Richie was just being a little antagonistic.
Oh, I'm just rolling all my dozens of eyes.
There's so many eyes in this podcast.
Michela, do you have any questions for Brutus?
Do you commute to Thumeru Ihil?
I use a form of astral projection.
Oh.
It's instantaneous.
I feel like you're lying and you just take the bus.
It's true, because a Brutus is not a little slug who cannot lie, so technically...
Scheming a Brutus.
Every time you talk about these characters, it's like all my past sins are coming back to, like, drag me down. Because now it's the little slug who can't lie.
We can't introduce the little slug until the Willem lore is released, otherwise it doesn't make sense.
It's not...
Where's the Brutus?
I'm still here.
Oh my god.
Brutus
I've got a couple of minutes.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, thank you so much for coming by. Everybody loves you.
That's alright, that's alright. Aw, that's very heartwarming.
Oh, you bring joy, you know?
There's a mug with your face on it
Yeah.
that stares at Richie.
Was I consulted for likeness rights?
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Alright, I'll head off
Perhaps
then.
he signed a paper with one of his many tentacles.
All right, say hi to Buff Brutus and Bell Brutus from us.
Oh, I will, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
I think I just got frenzied.
Oh god, the other day I was streaming Sekiro with Mimi, and I started doing this like pedantic nerd voice, and everyone realized that's just the exact same voice you use when you're a Brutus.
Actually, Mimi, that's not how it works.
Oh my god!
It's not a bonfire, it's a
Actually.
sculptor's idol. You're actually communing.
Beautiful.
Now I need like an audiobook read by a Brutus.
Oh my
Thank you.
god. Oh my, yeah.
It hurts less than the pirate.
But you know, people have been like, I have not been asking them, but like a lot of people are randomly like, oh, Rich's pirate voice is the best thing ever.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know. I think the Brutus
I'm, like,
is
just
the best,
waiting.
but
Well, you know, the little slug who cannot lie has not debuted yet.
oh, soon though.
Which is also the voice I use when I'm pretending the cat can talk. So
Richie. Okay, before we we go, I just got a visit from my muse. Pirate Brutus.
No. I'll talk about it later.
Okay, so as we were saying,
I've only been up half an hour.
I am amazed that like you can function at this point. I'd just be like, mornings are for coffee and contemplation.
I drank an entire 500ml monster as soon as I got up.
Oh,
yeah, out of
snap.
an Brutus.
No, I didn't, actually. I just drank it out of the can.
like a savage.
Richie, do not talk back to me. Do you know how many characters I can summon? Thank you, everyone. Okay, so how are we doing today? We're good? Excellent.
Oh, I'm really good.
I think we're so good.
I'm really happy to be here.
Okay.
We've been touched by his noodly appendage already.
So, back to the angelic outline. Where do you think Queen Yharnam lives? Is it a little house? Is it more of an apartment?
I thought you'd move on to the next question, and we're still here.
I didn't get an answer.
I guess if we're talking lore-wise, this is never something that's stated, but we can speculate that. I mean, in my opinion, I think that the Thumerian society was just a series of, well, it's kind of like Yharnam, like really cool architecture, castles. I mean, that's what we see when we go down into the dungeons. So we can presume that maybe Queen Yharnam lived in one of those fancy castles.
Yeah. You see things like courtyards and fountains and gardens. So clearly they're not just digging tombs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like any ancient city, it was covered up with time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're doing good progress. Okay, so the next question is...
It's 11:40 here. We started at 11. We're on the third question. None of it's been remotely relevant. And it was an extended visit from a Brutus. Like, this is not going well.
What are Queen Yharnam's hobbies?
Well, on the base, we see her praying at an altar.
Okay.
And, looking for a baby. That's pretty much...
And long strolls on the Moonside Lake.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Okay, but now think back before the events of Bloodborne. What do you think she did as hobbies? Maybe, you know what? Maybe she made her own dress, so maybe like cosplaying was her thing.
Yeah. I was thinking like there's a lot of stuff in the Chalice dungeons. There's like little statues and altars and things. So
Like
she may
pottery?
be, pottery, whistling maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought you said whistling and not whittling for a second. She's like a competitive whistler.
Shh. I can't whistle. Shh. Yay! Oh, who did that?
Me.
That was good.
I used to whistle in college because, like, I was like, singing would be embarrassed, so let me whistle. Oh my god, my computer just pooped. Okay, it is no longer pooping. It's good.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Excellent. Thank you. And now, again, before Richie goes off on his, oh, well, this is what we see in the dungeons. This is what the game tells us. Before that,
Okay. Before that,
what did she do for a living?
regal duties, presumably.
Indeed. Runnings of matters of state.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And how did
Perhaps.
she become queen?
Lore-wise, she must have been selected based on her ability to produce a child of a great one. God knows how that was evaluated, but somehow they figured it out, and it was her.
That sounds very creepy.
Well, I've got news about the rest of the game. It's not pleasant.
Oh. Okay, thank you. And is she the first queen?
No.
I would assume not, because they seem to have had a society set up that was based on these parameters. So I would assume that she was pretty well along.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they say like the queen was. They mention like traditionally the queen was blank, so that suggests there's been a long line of queens. Yeah.
And in her boss fight, if she was the first queen, it would probably have said Yharnam the first queen, like Lawrence the first.
True.
Yeah, dramatic boss subtitle. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like how some of them are very dramatic, and then there are other enemies that are just named Snakeball.
Yeah. Lost child of antiquity, Snakeball.
Snakeball. I saw a reimagined map of the Forbidden Woods, and there was just a mouth and then a big circle that says snakes.
Yep.
And then in one corner they said motherfucking blue things, and then the other corner just said oink oink motherfucker.
Okay, this is a good one. Who are her family and friends?
I can only think of Murgo, and it makes me sad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, does the great one she symbolically married count as family? I guess it must.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And then I guess the previous like Thumerian queens, I guess, might be family if it's like a bloodline that's carried on.
Yeah.
True, and
Yeah.
it seems that if we look at the Canehurst lore, that family was very important to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And if their society was inspired by Thumerian society, then that probably would have been very important to them as
Yeah,
well.
because there is like the reason we're doing 3 of these is because there's like a bloodline that goes from Yanam to Annalise to Ariana. But it's interesting, like you see, like they're very overt. You see this portrait in Canehurst of this woman with a child that she's nursing. But then that raises this question of like, how do they actually conceive? Because we know that the Thumerians can just conceive like through blood. They don't actually need like to have intercourse. Like they can just like child can just kind of like form inside them. Yeah,
They're like amphibians.
Yeah, or like almost like bees or something, where there's just like a queen who seems to be able to give birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Does she have a spouse?
She has a wedding ring.
Presumably whatever great one it is.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, like, when you look at other characters like Ariana, you don't know how willful that is.
And she has, well, you don't know how willful it is, but it seems to at least be something that they know is happening in Thumaru, whereas Ariana has no idea what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, true. And that's why it's so horrific, because it's the whole tapping into the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
We were saying that she may be married to like a great one. Do we know which great one it is?
We do not know. We see that she's got a wedding ring on, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a ceremonial marriage.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to be snarky, we can say it's Odin, which means it's obviously the doll.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, 100%.
Clearly.
Does Queen Yharnam have any children?
One as far as we know.
Yeah.
And that's Murgo.
Mm.
But the horrific thing about it is that you can clearly tell by, I'd say, mid-game, when you see her in the Moodside Lake, that something horrible has happened. So she is not pregnant at that point, but you do see that there was some sort of horrible situation because there's blood everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we learn later that Murgo is being used by Mensis, that society, to for purposes of transcending humanity into greatness. But yes, long story short, Murgo is her baby.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And does she have any descendants?
Does Murgo count?
And presumably all of Canehurst would be her descendants, or at least descendants from her family. Like, it could be her, could be other members of her family.
And there's also this whole thing with Canehurst and the blood, where it's like, you can take in Annalisa's blood and then you're considered to be part of the Canehurst family, even though you're not related to them. But once you get the blood in you, you're part of that bloodline.
It's like the 90s movies where you, like, slash your hand and you're like, we're blood brothers
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because we talked about this when we shot the pilot of the Queens.
Where we shot the pilot.
Yes. And
and then you were like, oh, I sound like a ghost. We should re-record.
yeah, because I was recording in the other room.
I feel like that podcast was pure gold,
Oh,
though.
I'm going to put it up on Patreon.
Put it on
Yeah.
Patreon.
Ah, yes, your patron shall thank you.
Yeah. I have a feeling that Richie is afraid to talk about one specific topic because I lost it a little bit during that podcast when Richie mentioned the altar. It's like you're not talking about that effing altar again.
I think we should absolutely talk about the altar.
I think this is like, the thing is, it's probably like the fourth time we've mentioned the altar.
Oh
You're
my
just like, even though it's like, it's literally the thing we're talking. And I mean, Bloodborne is 5 years old. All right, we're still going over things. We're allowed to mention the same thing more than once when it's relevant to what we're discussing.
There are certain topics that I just can't hear about anymore.
Well, how do you think I feel?
But you know what, Richie? I'm in a good place today. So please, Richie, tell us about the fucking altar.
Let's just imagine this as a Greek myth, and Richie is Sisyphus, and whatever is lying in that altar is the rock that Sisyphus keeps, rolling up the hill before it comes tumbling down.
Well, for reference, the other day, I had to write up something for the wiki, and I was doing it on the train for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
This is just my life now. So when we encounter Queen Yharnam, initially she is...
Oh, there's a big altar, but sometimes the altar doesn't have a top, and what do you see under the top? Oh, it's the hunter's mark. Oh my god, so does it mean that she's praying to the moon presence, and does it mean the moon presence is Murgo's father? Oh, I don't know.
Thank you, Richie.
That made me have wine in my nose.
I did my best. I was like, I'm going to go in with a positive attitude. I'm not going to give Rich a crap about the altar, and I couldn't. I'm sorry.
Why does the altar annoy you so much, but, like, you call on Imbruitus, like, several times a week?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
You're always asking about Willem doing moon viewing.
Oh, let's talk about, okay, this is my favorite thing.
That's my favorite thing, we talk about that, and then it's like, the altar, go the altar, oh, did me, oh, I bet you, oh, altar.
Michela, do you know about the Willem and the lake thing?
I know that he's a crotchety old guy who points vaguely at the moon going, ugh, and that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. That and he was supposed to have been a boss.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. Thank you. Excellent.
You'll find out more about moon viewing when when Sin releases her bafflingly bizarre Willem thing that she insisted that we, like, co-write together, and like, 90% of it is, like, kinda on topic and vaguely like something Vardy would do, but then she'll just randomly have a little slug shows up and starts talking in a high-pitched voice.
It's amazing!
We're just, like, there's no, like, plan or it's
so
normally
great.
on topic, then you're just like, Richie, I have the little slug! Oh, he's so cute! And then it's just in it
Okay,
now.
you know what we're doing, Michela? Richie's making it seem like I invented the slug. That's not what happened. You know what? The little slug appeared on all the screams that followed part 3, which is a Patreon podcast, but I'm going to post that part on YouTube so people see that you're just as complicit.
The little slug is, I was, like, trolling you,
Okay, we can do this. Richie, stop
which is
taking
the
us off
voice
topic.
I do when I pretend my cat is talking.
Stop taking us off topic, Richie. We have to get through this list. It's been an hour. We're at question 10.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're having a great time, aren't we?
Yes!
We're good. We're on track. Okay. And the last question about Queen Yharnam in general is, who is her biggest fan? I think it's the Queen Killer.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, he tries and he tries and he tries and he like goes
Oh, yeah,
shirtless.
yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, notice me, Yharnam senpai," and she's like, "No."
Yeah, Lawrence also kind of like that. He's like he's not a positive fan, but he's like, I came all the way to Eye Hill to find you. Had my head cut off.
He's like a stalker.
Yeah. Well, he is. Lawrence is an ass.
He's like one of those nice guys.
He is, yes, he is. Lawrence is a nice guy. His transformation into the beast is like he starts at the beginning of the dungeon in r/nice guys, and then as he goes down, he gradually starts posting more in r/incel.
Yes, exactly.
Did you know that I learned what an incel is from Richie?
I'm glad. Do you hate the world more now?
A little.
I mean, it's good that you didn't learn from incels themselves, and that's how I learned about incels.
Yeah.
We're from incels,
Yeah.
so be glad that it's from Richie.
Poor child. Ugh. Okay.
This went down a dark turn. We're talking about a dark game, and we're like, oh, this is the limit.
Yeah, when we're just joking about child sacrifice, and then you incels. That's just disgusting.
Disgusting. Trash.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Now we're going to move on to the present and look at what Queen Yharnam is wearing.
Woo!
Yeah, so here I will send you a link from bloodborne-wiki, and it has a bunch of pictures of Queen Yharnam, and so we can look at her as we answer these questions. So,
Yay.
what does her attire tell us in general?
She's obviously wearing a wedding dress, inspired by a few things. One is post-Victorian weddings, because I found out that the white dress wasn't exactly a trend until Queen Victoria got married in white, and it was a statement of wealth back then. Another thing about the overall design that's pretty intriguing is that it's based loosely on Lucy Westenra's character from the 1992, I believe, movie version of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was designed by Eiko Ishioka. And not only is that collar Elizabethan inspired, but it also is made to resemble a lizard. And let me look up what the name of that lizard is. It is an Australian frilled lizard, which is kind of like that lizard in Jurassic Park that ate Nedry.
I have seen them.
Did they try to eat you?
No, they're quite small.
No.
And they're roses they're kind of like Dior roses that are placed throughout the dress. And Richie, you have a good knowledge of why this is. Do you want to expand on that?
There is a recurring motif linking the Pthumerians with, I don't know if it's exactly the same rose every time, but they seem to be the only thing in Yharnam that uses a rose motif. So you see you see the roses on the queen's dress, and then you also see in those little cloistered gardens, there's little bushes with roses on them. And the doll has who's based on Maria. She's got a little rose on her. I don't know if it's actually a rose. It's like she has a dried flower that looks very similar on her bonnet. And then there's a removed coffin that I guess we'll talk about some other time that's got roses laid on it. So presumably that would be some Pthumerian woman.
Coffins of bloodborne.
Don't even no.
I think it's interesting too because there aren't a lot of roses in Bloodborne. There are a lot of like sunflower-ish flowers, like the lumen flowers, but the roses are something that's very particular.
It's this motif that's linking all the Pthumerians together.
Excellent, thank you. So now we can look at specific articles of clothing. So her dress, Michela talked to us a bit about that. You talked about the roses. Is there anything else that we can say about the dress?
Was there anything about the shoes?
Well, later, yeah.
Later. This isn't Shoes of Bloodborne.
Shoes of Bloodborne.
Elden Ring's never coming out. Like, we got to do something.
Rings of Elden Ring.
I'm really
Shoes of Elden
worried.
Ring.
No, my fear is that Elden Ring comes out, it has like 50 different rings in it, and Sin's just... I can see her face, just like the smile just gradually spreading, making her little gremlin face, and she's like, it's Rings of Elden Ring. Just like calling me at 2 a.m. Rings of Elden Ring!
I'm convinced that she's your actual alarm clock. Like, she calls you, and that's how you wake up in the morning.
Alarm clocks of Australia!
No, but this is like your thing about how we need to not have different seasons for different hemispheres. We just say, like, there's winter, and in the northern hemisphere it's cold, and in the southern hemisphere it's hot, but it's always winter.
Is this like Australia Winterfell?
She was sitting there, and she's like, so what month is it? And I'm like, it's like June, and it's winter. It's like, yeah, and it's... And we're like, and it's cold where you are. It's like, yes. Not sure I believe you. I was like, but Richie, it's light outside. It's not dark.
Okay,
So, like,
Richie.
I'm on the other side of the world, and you're like,
Richie, focus. I can't believe I'm saying this. Focus, Richie, focus.
Okay.
So now that we talked about the dress and there's nothing else to add, now we can move on to shoes. So, Richie, can you send us the shoes of Queen Yharnam?
I am. I'm just going to post it into the Discord group DM. Yeah. Now, Discord has crashed, so that's good.
That's not good at all, Richie.
No, it's not good.
But you just said it's good.
There's being sarcastic.
Sarcasm.
For what profit is it to a man if he gains the world but loses his own soul? Matthew 16:26, I believe. It'd probably be quicker to just play up to Yanam and Bloodborne than wait for this thing to open.
Oh. Okay, let me Google Yharnam shoes.
It's really irritating
okay,
because
I have it.
have them on my...
Yo,
Oh,
I
good.
found it. It's good.
Okay.
I will post it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I
okay.
found it. Yep.
You got it? All right, so let's do this again. So now we're going to talk about specific articles of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
But since Michela and Richie covered the dress, we're going to move on to shoes.
Yay.
Yay! So what do her shoes tell us?
They have a slight heel. I'm looking at the actual like extracted 3D model right now. They actually, they have a pretty significant heel. It's not massive, but
Oh, cool.
They're definitely high heels. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it looks like the legs are kind of designed with a heel, but I can't see it in the picture I have.
Yeah. She's got she does have high heels on. They're not like super, super high, but they're like pretty high.
Mm-hmm. And she has like a decoration on front.
Yeah, she has a little gemstone in the toe.
Mm-hmm. That's very cute.
And I think that gemstone reminds me of the brooch that both the doll and Lady Maria wear. And it's another motif that just connects the three women together.
Yeah.
Great. Do you think they're comfortable shoes?
No.
Not at all, but there's a lot of other things that seem uncomfortable about how Yharnam is at the moment. So I think that the shoes are the least of her worries.
Yeah. Also, like, when we fight her in Eye Hill, like, the floor is quite uneven stone with, like, big gaps in between, so they're probably quite irritating to walk in. But then when you encounter her, like, she's like a weird astral projection. So she can probably just sort of glide.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, she's probably just in her PJs in some other remote location. She's just like, all right, generate wedding dress. We're done. We're good.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to accessories. Is she wearing any like bracelets, or she's wearing stuff in her head?
Yeah, she has kind of like a tiara.
And earrings as well.
Yeah, interestingly, she doesn't have a crown for a queen. She has her wedding dress.
Well, the tiara could be a crown.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And she's got her wedding ring on.
And it's the same type of motif as her earrings.
Yeah.
Okay. As well as the crown itself, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, check out her manicure.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so you see, she got her nails done.
Yeah.
And they're the same color as the ring as well.
That's true. It's kind of, you can't really make out the color because the colors in Bloodborne are so muted. I would guess it's some sort of maybe like a gray stone or an onyx. But it seems that way. It seems to reflect the surrounding architecture really nicely. There's like an amber glow to it.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing I guess we can talk about now is the thing around her hands. Like the shackles or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to call that, but I can't believe it, but well, I can because this is Bloodborne, but they seem to be embossed with various very flashy designs.
Yeah, they're probably symbolic.
And I think we talked about it in the pilot, but could you guys elaborate again on what this is?
The pilot. I'm so glad this pilot got picked up for a full series. From the commissioning editor at SinclairLore.
Producer, SinclairLore. Director, Sinclair. Executive producer, Sinclair, and Sinclair. Starring SinclairLore.
Directed by Hideo Kojima.
A Hideo Kojima podcast. It will not win Game of the Year.
Okay, so you guys, tell me about the shed around her arms.
It's such an interesting thing because it seems like it's almost ceremonial, especially in terms of the decorations. A long time ago, a little bit of a tangent, but I went to the Met Museum in New York and I had 3 hours there and I spent the entire time in their weapons and armor gallery. And they had stuff like this, like in all the things that were really, really ornate with incredible sculpture work and embossing. They were all ceremonial. They weren't really to see battle. They were just like, okay, a king had that, a queen had that, but it was really just for dress. So it's really no coincidence that this is really the same thing. So it could be very well symbolic, as if to say it's physical, obviously, but it's also symbolic as if to say that she was really just shackled into this lifestyle and this horrific events that are happening to her, her baby being stolen and such.
Yeah.
So it seems that she was probably, it's easy to presume that she was probably kept there in that sort of mausoleum-looking boss arena. Or at least during the ceremony where she was either wedded or had the child, she was shackled down. But interestingly, during the fight, you could tell that she could easily break free from that any time.
Yeah.
So I think that it was more ceremonial and more cultural to have that shackle on the wrists.
Yeah, because if she's the most recent in a very long line of queens, then at this point they're probably just aware that what's going to happen. So they don't need to be restrained, yeah. Also, interestingly, even though she's restrained, the implication seems to be that she's never going to give birth to begin with. She seems to just want to keep Murgo inside of her.
And plus, they say that
Yeah.
she's not a great one, but they say every great one loses its child. So, and
Yeah.
it seems to be that a lot of the humans that bear children of the great ones, they may or may not ever come into full birth.
Yeah. And also, like, when you're fighting her, she sort of rubs her belly, and that makes Murgo do things, which suggests that, like,
yes,
that's kind of their relationship. Yeah, Murgo has passed on, but his, like, physical remains are inside of her, and that's, like, binding his spirit to her or something like that.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's kind of evident in the fact that isn't it the Yharnam stone? Looks like
Yeah.
a baby.
Yeah.
We're pretty sure the Yharnam stone is, like, the remnants of Murgo, yeah.
So the Yharnam stone is something that
Mhm.
actually is representative of real life. We've mentioned this in some podcasts, but there's a thing called the lithopidian, or a stone baby.
Yeah.
And it's basically when a fetus dies and sort of calcifies, I guess.
Calcifies. Yeah.
And that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens.
Presumably it was, every great one loses its child, so the child was lost, like, in the womb and just stayed there.
Yeah.
And we know that, like, as far as Bloodborne's concerned, like, blood turns into rock eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's so weird. We just talked about dead babies, and then next on the outline is makeup.
Yay!
Okay.
I know, so like it's hard to make that subject fun.
It's like those, like, channels that do top 10 lists of, like, really horrifying things, but they keep the same, like, countdown for every single one. So it's like talking about some hideous tragedy, and they're like, number 5.
Ariana and the weird celestial child. You kind of have to be motivated for those, I realized. That's something I learned recently. I was like, wait a second, I had to re-record some of my top 10 because I was like, I sound bored. I can't sound bored. I just sound so jazzed.
So high.
You can be jazzed about calcified babies.
Okay, so picture 13 out of 33, we can see her face. Thank you, Mavswiki. I can't tell if she's wearing any makeup.
Well, that's the thing about Thumerians, because they seem to have, like, they have very dark, like, around their eyes and around their lips, but it's not clear if that's makeup or... Because the regular Thumerians also have that, and, like, unless they, like, put it on themselves, like, before they go to work in the dungeon, yeah.
They, like, put on their eyeliner.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to go.
I mean, they are pretty goth. Like, I can
Yeah.
imagine that being part of the uniform. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they are the most
Yeah.
goth. I think that either one of two things: either she doesn't have makeup and that's just her skin tone because the Thumerians seem almost gray, or they could have put white makeup on her, possibly.
Yeah.
But then all Thumerians have white makeup on because they're pretty pale.
True. I think that they're grayish, whereas Yharnam is like more of a stark white.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps maybe for like the wedding or the ceremony, they could have just made her like very. Well, I mean, she's also inspired by Elizabeth, like the Queen
who
Elizabeth.
had the white
so
lead,
perhaps they could have decked her out in bright white goth makeup.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because she seems distinctive from the other Thumerians as far as we can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, should we give her a makeover?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
always.
we've got the 3D models, so anything's possible.
Excellent.
You can give her like a good old cut crease. Yharnam's Drag Race.
We were seriously talking about doing that.
Start your engines.
we were like, how do we keep this content going? And one of the ideas was like, we'd do a Fashion
How do
Souls
we keep this
episode.
fresh?
Yeah, we'd do a Fashion Souls episode. We would actually just like summon people and rate what they were wearing and make them like walk down and turn around and walk back again.
It can be like Raven and Raja's. There are two contestants on Drag Race. Their series called Toot or Boot.
Yeah.
So we can rate the fashion and be like, that's a 2, or if we don't like it, be like, that's a boot.
Oh my god, yes.
Henrik, toot or boot? I give it a 2.
Okay, thank you. Now let's look at her hair.
Okay.
Are you giving me attitude?
No, I'm scrolling up this extremely exhaustive gallery looking for her hair. There it is.
Okay. It looks like she has like a very intricate haircut, which means she went to a hairdresser.
That's true.
Oh, she looks like she has, I forget what it's called, but it's some sort of French updo,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
Oh no, they're roses. I'm seeing it in a little more detail. So yeah, she definitely has, it's something that's up, but they have roses that's either made of hair or white fabric or something like that.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit vaguely of how the doll might have her hair up. But of course the doll has the wispy bangs over her face, whereas Yharnam doesn't. She has the veil instead.
So that means that somewhere in the dungeons there's a hair salon.
I was going to say the other Fumarians, they're either bald or it's really scraggly. So presumably Yharnam's the only one who goes there. But also
Spoiler alert, she is the hairdresser.
Well, she's the queen, so she can probably pay them enough to like keep them in business. Just with her as the only customer. Yeah.
True.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is feet.
What, shoes and feet are separate things?
Yes!
Yeah, it's unless is she ever barefoot?
I'm surprised she isn't, considering who made it.
Okay, so thank you. Okay. So we kind of talked about this, but generally speaking, when we encounter her in Bloodborne.
Where else do you encounter her?
You encounter her like in the street.
In a casual setting.
You encounter her in Compton with a switchblade. You run.
When we encounter her in a professional setting, giving a seminar.
When you encounter her in the small parking space and you go, you can't park over there. And she's like, kid, I got smart park.
It's like, bitch, I'm the queen. I can park wherever.
I know.
Would she need to park if she can astral project?
Oh, I mean, that's just a form of spiritual parking, though, isn't it?
She parks her projections.
She has, like, it's like the Utena movie where she turns into a car and she friggin' just parks.
The only thing I know about Utena, right, is I know that it's really gay and someone turns into a car. Those are the only two things I know about it. And I have it on DVD and I haven't watched it, and I'm like, I don't know if the person turning into the car is going to live up to my imagination. But I imagine it will.
It will live up to it and more.
Thank you.
But I implore you, please don't watch the movie before you watch the series, or else that's all you're going to know about it.
I'll watch the series. Yeah.
Yeah, watch the series first and then the movie, because if you just watch the movie, you're like, what the fuck did I just watch? You're just like, this was very gay and someone turned into a car.
All right, I'm sold.
It was the first DVD I ever bought, and it was before I owned a DVD player. Yeah. My family just got a computer that had a DVD player, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy the Utena movie DVD. It just came out, so I was so excited.
Yeah.
I think I still own it, and now I have like a special edition one, and now I need the Blu-ray because I need the trifecta of weirdness that is the Utena movie.
Excellent. Okay, so, Queen Yharnam. We encounter her in blood.
Mm-hmm.
What role does she play, and what happens to her?
So she plays a subtly important role in the story. Pretty much after Rum, arguably the second half of the game is finding her child. So I'll have to probably pull up what the note says, but when you defeat Rom and you go to Yarhogul for the first time when you get consciousness back. I forget what it says, but it says
ritual secret broken, seek the nightmare newborn.
Yes.
Yeah. Notes of Bloodborne.
Notes of Bloodborne. Rude motorcyclists in the back. You guys are all rude, and you're racing, and it's not allowed. But
they're just excited about this podcast.
They are. They're racing over here so that they can listen.
There we go.
But and after that, throughout the rest of the game, roughly, except for arguably the DLC, I'm not sure whether or not you hear it in the DLC or in places like Canehurst where time seems to be frozen, but you hear the Murgo, her baby, crying.
Yeah.
So slowly, little by little, you learn that the baby is being used for the menses ritual, and he's being used for absolutely terrible purposes. They're taking people against their will and trying to create these ascended, ungodly, unnatural forms from it. So she appears at key points such as the Moonside Lake, and then again in the Nightmare of Mensis right before you reach the Murgo's wet nurse.
Yeah.
And that's when you encounter her and you encounter Murgo for the first time. So by defeating the wet nurse, you're cutting off its nutrition, of course, and then you're essentially silencing the child. But as horrifying and sad as that sounds, it sets Queen Yharnam free, and in fact it brings closure to the story in general of Bloodborne, so that when you go back down the stairs after you defeat the wet nurse, she bows to you.
Yeah. I guess like the other role that she plays that's important is the Chalice Dungeon boss, because you will likely do the Chalice Dungeons after you do the main game, because she's at the very, very bottom of them. And it will be a surprise when you enter the room and you see her, because you'll realize this is the woman you've been seeing throughout the game. And if you've read the Chalice descriptions up to that point, they're sort of teasing you with the idea that the Thumerians, like, they had a royalty, and then the royalty is revealed to be a matriarchy. And then that's revealed to be, like, and the queen took a name that had, like, it says classical roots, meaning that she took, like, a Thumerian name. And then you realize that the queen's name is Yanam, which, like, brings everything sort of full circle, and you realize the city of Yanam is a Thumerian city, and they've just forgotten.
Thank you, Michela. Thank you, Richie. And the last couple of questions have to do with the future. So after Bloodborne, what happens with Quinn Yharnam?
Her horrific consciousness still stirs in the labyrinth.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, she is an undead queen, so presumably she would have still lived. It's. I would like to think, although this is ideal, and Bloodborne is not a world of idealism, because she kind of disappeared at the very end of the canon game. Hopefully her spirit would have found a way to move on after all that, and she kind of lived to ensure that the hunter was able to fulfill their mission.
Yeah, I think the DLC is sort of like trying to not like explain it in like a here's the canon way. But, like, the whole thing with Kos and the orphan seems to be very deliberately mirroring the Queen and Murgo, to just sort of, like, underline what was going on with them. So, like...
That's true, because,
yeah,
because when Lance came out with that video about you taking I believe it was the Yharnam Stone, you take it to the chanting, the shaman of the village, he says a bunch of very unintelligible... commentary about Kos and thanking the hunter. Yeah. But Richie, talk a little more about that, because I find it hard to fathom all that.
Yeah. So I guess to begin with, we should clarify that the DLC that we have used to be two different DLCs, and kind of like what Dark Souls 3 had, and they sort of jammed them together to make one. Which is why there's some slight, like, incongruities between, like, bits of it seem to be taking place in the waking world, and then other bits seem to be taking place in the nightmare. And, initially, like, this is not something that we've talked about on this, so I guess this is the first place you're going to hear about it, is that when it was two DLCs, the fishing hamlet area was like 3 times the size. It was really complicated. It was like massive. And it kind of looked like the Nightmare Frontier, with all of this like mist everywhere and these gravestones sticking out of the mist, and there were these islands you had to traverse. And so a lot of the cut stuff is probably left from that, back when it was a more complicated construction, but basically there is leftover code and voice for the Hamlet chanting priest that you meet, where if you present him with the Yharnam stone, he will give a little speech about, like, cause time is naught but the sea is rumbling, and things like that. And then he'll say, cause thanks you, visitor from beyond. And then we don't know what would happen. And, like, when Lance was, like, digging it up, like, I was talking to him and we were going back and forth, and I was like, oh, do you think, like, was it always the Yharnam stone, or are they just testing and they're just shoving the Yharnam stone's ID in there to make sure it's it will work with that item ID? And then he's like, no, the prompt very specifically, it's written give Yharnam stone. So the Yharnam stone was, like, very specifically part of that quest, whatever it was. I suspect because what's happening with Mikolash and Mensis and everything is that they're using Murgo to beckon Cods. So presumably this was, like, the sort of nice, I guess, quote-unquote, variant of that, where if you brought Murgo to Cods, then that would maybe sort of, like, close the circle where, like, Cods would have a child again.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. And, like, because we were talking about the designs and everything, like, if you look at the design of Kos and the design of Yharnam, they're very, very similar looking. Because, like, Kos she's like, the top half looks like a woman, but then she has the huge, like, the bottom half of her is like a squid or a whale or something, and it's split open, like, and it looks like she's wearing, like, a wedding dress if you look at her from above. She's got this big, like trail going from the back of her. And Kos has she has tentacles that come down over her face, and it looks like Yharnam's veil. So I think she's very deliberately designed to look like Yanam, yeah, or even just look like a woman in a wedding dress. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And the last question is kind of the same. What do you think is going on in Queen Yharnam's life after the events of Bloodborne?
So I'd like to think that, I mean, other than her taking up tennis and living her best life, again, like, I'd like to think that her spirit was able to move on. I know that she is one of the two queens that are known as the undead queen, so I am assuming that she's still alive somewhere, but I would like to think that she was able to get closure from that and just move on to whatever the next life is.
Yeah, that works, like, in terms of the story, that, like, the whole thing starts with the Healing Church committing this horrible, like, atrocity that separates the mother from the child, and then it ends by sort of, like, bringing them back together again, and it all sort of closes and passes on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bloodborne is a happy game.
Yeah. It's cathartic.
It is. That's a great word for it. It's
Yeah.
kind of like how I think Yoko Taro, when asked about whether Nier Automata was a happy game, he goes, "Oh, there's a happy ending of sorts."
Yeah, like we talked about like the sort of intersection between, like, Gothic fiction and Lovecraftian fiction a little bit, but, like, Bloodborne ends up being, like, a very straightforward ghost story in the sort of Gothic sense, because you have this, like, this horrible crime was committed, which is the massacre at the hamlet and the defiling of Kos, and then the that sort of lingers and it's never dealt with, and people keep trying to, like, pretend it didn't happen, and it keeps coming back to get the people who did it. And then the way that you resolve it is, instead of continuously trying to, like, push it further and further back, is that you address it and you sort of try to undo it. So you end the curse on Yanam by, like, reuniting the mother and the child again. And they sort of both, like, and I guess it would have been a lot more direct in the, like, older versions where it was just straight up Kos in the end, instead of the wet nurse. But, like, you resolve it all.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. Do the outro, Richie.
That was Yanam, Thumerian Queen. An in-depth discussion and part 1 of our limited 3-part series, The Queens of Bloodborne. I guess we should thank Trin, who is the person who took all of those pictures of Yanam we were using as reference.
Yes! Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Trin.
And Trin can do that.
Yeah, Trin is a rock star in
she's the true
Dungeons
queen
Working.
of the chalices.
Aw, nice.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true.
And she's able to do that because she can switch off the AI of the bosses.
Oh, wow.
She's a genius.
So thanks to her, yeah, she is. So thanks to her, we have all these like images of like Yanam in poses you couldn't normally see because she gets up when you walk in the room.
Aw, awesome. Thank you, Trin.
And the shots of her doing attacks, that is just Trin running up to her with the monocular, getting it in the face.
That's like the brave souls who try to take good screen caps of Maria while just getting their ass whooped, and I just salute them forever because I'm like, oh, I don't know, like I wish I could, but I don't know if I have the
They're the
strength.
real heroes.
I know, not all heroes wear capes.
And thank you so much, Michela, for coming by today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me again. It's always a blast.
Oh. And we'll see you again next week.
Yep.
Woohoo! Yay!
Yay!
There's at least what? Like 35 queens in Bloodborne?
Well, all women are queens.
Be like the feet of Bloodborne all over it. The toenails of Bloodborne.
Yes.
You joke, but like we have a lot. We have a lot of discussion of like claws and nails and things we could do.
Follicles of Bloodborne! Alright, well, thank you so much, and we'll see y'all later.
Bye!
Bye!
Bye. Thank you.